Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Fantasy Football Today. Adam, Dave, and Dan. We've got ADD on Fantasy Football Today. How about that? No, Dave's not feeling that joke. All right, so we welcome you. We have a live mock draft. It's about to start. Our audience members are in. We got 12 audience members, listeners, and viewers. We're not participating in this. We're just critiquing. And to those of you that are in the draft, hang on a second. We're going to run through the news and notes real quick. You want to send us an email? I do have to make time for a mailbag, hopefully soon. fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. And also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts with a question. It will likely get read on the show. All right, we'll start with the Jordan Addison news. He went 140 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. That is crazy, dude. Dave, any concerns? Do you think this could lead to anything, any suspension or anything like that?
I don't think it leads to a suspension. I just think it leads to him hearing about it, minor distraction for the team for the next week. And their coaches are going to make it a real point to try and get him to be a lot safer and to make better decisions in his life. That's it. I don't think I don't think this does anything for his fantasy value. I want to see him healthy. He missed part of minicamp.
Isaiah Pacheco says he's going to be ready for week 1. He had surgeries on his hand and shoulders during the offseason. He played most of the season with a shoulder injury. He broke his hand in the playoffs. So he did get banged up. He's a physical guy. And also the Athletic says Pacheco is going to be the starter. He's going to have a bigger workload this year. He wants to be more reliable in the passing game. Let's see where Pacheco goes in today's draft. And great news. If you know Zach Brook, one of our producers, he was dancing in the streets yesterday because the Commanders were sold from Dan Snyder, not Dan Schneider, to Josh Harris. So it's a good day for the Commanders franchise, and hopefully,
and a good day for me because at least once a year, typically twice a year, I'll get an angry DM or an angry Twitter message of somebody who's just wailing off on me, thinking that I'm Dan Snyder, even though the last names aren't spelled anything close to each other. So that may stop because he may not be in the news anymore, and I won't have to be mistaken for him. And sadly, he's not the only one I'm mistaken for. Unfortunately, there's another Dan Schneider with a D. I have no D. And that guy is some creep that used to run Nickelodeon TV shows and like just a horrible human being. And I've seen a lot of now what he's done because people have confused me for him and just like, click the profile pic. I write about football and the Giants. I am not either of these people.
So he says, folks. So he says. By the way, it's Dan, Adam, and Dave. We are your fantasy dad today. Is that better?
ADD was better.
Okay, good. All right.
We just get to the damn mock draft, please.
The mock draft has begun, and look at that. We have an auto draft already. That is the second pick. So come on, everybody. I gave you like one order. You got to be ready for the draft here. So I'm just going to back that out and hopefully give this guy another 30 seconds. But the first pick was Justin Jefferson. So let's go through the format here. Now, a lot of our drafts are 3 wide receiver leagues, but Dave has told me in the past that the majority of fantasy leagues, I hope this is still true, Dave,
It's still true. 2
running backs, 2 receivers, and a flex, right?
You can always tell who plans the mock draft on our shows and on our site. If it's 3 wide receivers, it's Jamie. If it's 2 wide receivers, it's either me or Adam or Heath. Right. I don't think Heath has done any 3 wide receiver mocks. I'm not sure. But the majority of fantasy leagues have 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 tight end, and 1 flex. But we've been making inroads on trying to get people to use 2 flexes because it's more fun. You get to start more players. It takes away one tough lineup decision from everybody each week.
Well, that's true until those bye week and injuries start racking up. Then it makes it even tougher.
All right. So anyway, Justin Jefferson was the first pick. Austin Eckler was the second pick. Oh, give me a break, people. I am getting really annoyed right now. 2 auto picks in the first 3 picks. Let's go. Come on. We're better than this. So I'm going to put 30 seconds back on the clock. And this, oops. All right. Here we go. Eckler's going to be the second pick.
We got Jefferson, Eckler.
And now we've got...
Third pick is Kelsey, according to the chat room.
Kelsey. All right. I'll select Kelsey. Good. All right. Good. That's spicy. All right. Anyway, we're off and running here. So, yeah, 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, flex, 6 bench spots. We have a 13-round draft, and it is half PPR. Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey. Let's see when Bijan Robinson gets taken. Let's see when Cooper Kupp gets taken. So far, the first 5 are the, typical 5 in some order. All right, Bijan Robinson goes 6. Cooper Kupp still on the board. Did I mention it's half PPR? It is half PPR.
You did.
Okay. Did I mention it's 2 receivers? Just kidding. All right, this is where it gets interesting here. All right. I think Kupp will probably be next. We'll see. We got 12 seconds. Who would you take at 7? Kupp's still on the board, Dan.
No, I would take Kupp in this spot. But actually, you know what? I would take Tyreek Hill.
Okay. Dave, who would you take?
I would take Kupp over Hill, but if Saquon Barkley shows up to Giants camp, I'm taking him over both.
Look at the team name of Team 7 who took Oil of Olave. Great team name. Tyreek Hill. So still just 2 running backs off the board, 8 picks in. This is fantasy football. What is happening here?
What do you mean? What's happening here?
It's just a different year. I mean, only 2 running backs off the boord.
It is weird that our consensus one this year is a receiver. I can't remember that's ever happened during my
3
time.
running backs. I'm sorry. I forgot. Eckler, McCaffrey, Bijan, but still it's wide receiver heavy. So
first of all, I think those are going to be the first 3 running backs that come off the board in the majority of leagues. Second of all, in PPR, this is going to be normal this year. You're going to see wide receivers coming off the board much sooner than before. And it's because for the last 2 seasons, the elite wide receivers, the ones that have produced like top 12 on a per game basis, have been better than the running backs. They're getting more targets, they're catching more passes, and they're dominating in PPR. It'll be the exact opposite. If we were to do a non-PPR draft, I think it's a big mistake to take wide receivers early in round 1. I think you've got to go after the running backs there because all those catches, those 90 and 100 catches that these wideouts are expected to get, they're not going to count for diddly poo. So you've got to go with the running backs instead. If it's non-PPR, this is half PPR. In full PPR, I'd expect the exact same thing. Totally fine with how things are right now in half PPR with this draft.
Let's catch everybody up here because after Kupp, then it gets maybe a little bit more interesting. Tyreek Hill went 8th. All right, Jonathan Taylor 9, Stephon Diggs 10, Lamb 11. So Barkley falls a little bit to 12, but Taylor going ahead of Barkley in this draft. Devontae Adams 13, AJ Brown 14, Nick Chubb 15, Jalen Waddle 16. So, anything after Tyreek Hill went 8th, we had Taylor, then Diggs, then Lamb, Barkley, Adams, AJ Brown, Nick Chubb, Jalen Waddle. Does CeeDee Lamb deserve to be a first-round pick?
I'll tell you what, I would take CeeDee Lamb over Jonathan Taylor. I'd take a handful of these guys over Jonathan Taylor. I'm a Badgers fan, but I don't really see the path for Jonathan Taylor this year in a PPR league. It's a half PPR, so it's a little bit better. But in any version of PPR here, I'm very worried about Jonathan Taylor's fantasy upside this year. I don't really see a role growing in the passing game. I think it's going to regress with Anthony Richardson. I'm worried about Richardson stealing red zone touches, and I'm worried about the offensive line. And all that combines to the point where I'm just looking at a guy with great talent, bad situation. Those are not typically the running backs I invest in, especially not first-round picks.
Are you worried, Dan, about CeeDee Lamb being as utilized? Because
Kellen Moore,
everything that we're pointing to in Dallas is they're going to take it slower. The pace is going to be slower. Mike McCarthy wants the defense to get a little bit more rest. Maybe they run it a little bit more. Kind of surprised that Tony Pollard wasn't picked already in this mock. I would take Pollard ahead of CeeDee Lamb, and I would take Taylor ahead of Lamb too, just because I think that his upside is higher than Lamb's upside. I think they both have some warts that fantasy managers kind of have to understand. But Taylor could still see a lot of carries and could still see a good amount of touchdowns. Wouldn't surprise me if he finished the year with 10, maybe even 11 or 12 total. I don't think he's getting to 40 catches or anything remotely close to that with Anthony Richardson there. And I don't think he's getting 15 touchdowns with Richardson there. But I still think he's too talented of a running back.
Yeah.
And an offense that has proven to lean on its players who are truly unique. We've seen that in Philadelphia when Shane Steichen was there, did the same thing in San Diego or in LA with the Chargers. I can't believe I almost said San Diego. Man, I'm old. Bottom line, I think Taylor's got upside that's better than CeeDee Lamb.
I can understand that. I'm not as typically high on Lamb either. I have my concerns about Taylor. I shared him. 10 touchdowns. It's possible, Dave. I feel like if he hits that high range of outcomes, it means that Anthony Richardson is moving the football consistently. That's the part that concerns me the most with Taylor. It's mostly just that offense, because the expectation is it was rock bottom last year with that offense, and that's partly why Taylor became almost unusable in fantasy. It felt like I had him on one roster. But I just am not so sure that won't be the case again this year, and that's what scares me the most.
And I would counter that by saying I think the run game is the one thing they've got that will keep defenses unbalanced and struggling.
And
'Cause
maybe
they
that
can
was
hammer it with Taylor. They can use Richardson. I think their RPOs.
Reed.
I think their RPOs can be pretty dangerous.
could.
That's not asking too much of Richardson as a rookie.
And I may be putting too much weight into the offensive line, but that's where my concerns start. I feel like it's an aging offensive line only going in the wrong direction.
Okay, so let's catch people up here because, we've talked a lot about the possibility of Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, or Tony Pollard making it to the 2-3 turn, which is what we see in average draft position. That did not happen here. Round 2 was pretty running back heavy. I do think in a half PPR league, you can certainly make the case for Nick Chubb as a first-round pick. He did not go in the first round, but he went 15th overall. No, I'm sorry. 15th overall, third pick of round 2. So I'm just going to catch everybody up on round 2. I've suspended the draft just for a moment here so we can catch our breath. But it was Devontae Adams at 13, A.J. Brown, Nick Chubb, Jalen Waddle, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tony Pollard, Garrett Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, to the guy who got Kelsey in round 1, now has Kelsey Mahomes.
Chief stack.
Ramondre Stevenson and Joe Mixon at 24.
Wow.
I took Mixon at 26 or something like that. I think this is a good spot for him, especially this draft. The running backs did get pushed up quite a bit. So anyway, Dave, how about I'm just gonna ask you a few questions. I'm gonna fire away with some questions, okay?
Rapid fire, baby.
Amon-Ra St. Brown over Garrett Wilson in half PPR. Your thoughts?
I think Wilson probably has a little bit more upside in half PPR. Might lean Wilson over St. Brown there.
Ramondre Stevenson, one pick before Joe Mixon. Your thoughts?
Totally fine with that. I think he's got more upside than Mixon.
Dan, Mixon, or Ramondre?
Mixon. If the Patriots bring in Leonard Fournette, and I think they will, or someone, because it could just be Kareem Hunt. They're going to bring in someone. They're the Patriots. They've already worked out a bunch of backs.
10 seconds. Rapid fire. Go ahead. Finish up.
I just feel like it's going to take away from Stevenson's value.
Okay. Last question to both of you. 10 seconds. Jalen Waddle went before Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry. Your thoughts on that, Dave?
Hated it.
Dad?
I'm actually with our resident running back truther, Dave, and I hated it too.
Okay, I didn't hate it, but I did appreciate the In Living Color reference. All right, the Fly Girls are ready to resume.
Oh, I don't even know what Living Color is.
Don't worry about it, buddy. I knew you wouldn't. Round 3 is underway. Team 1 has Justin Jefferson and Joe Mixon and maybe Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. And if you do that, you have to start. Every player has to have a J in their first or last name, the first letter of the first or last name. So you got Justin Jefferson or Joe Mixon. Will he go with another J? Let's find out. Michael is on the clock. Michael.
I'm real curious to see where Breece Hall goes, Adam, because he's still available. We know that he's on the pup list.
Hey, he's not available, Dave.
He's gone.
Just went. That's the earliest I've seen Breece Hall go. Now you're not getting him in 24 more picks. You're not getting him at the end of round 4. So if you got to shoot your shot there, but that's Jefferson, Mixon, and Breece Hall. Dave, is that too early?
No, I'm totally fine with it. I'm the only one. Usually I rank players based on what their situation is now, but I'm doing it a little bit differently with Breece Hall. I think he's going to be okay to start the season. And I think it might take 3 or 4 weeks for him to really get back into the good graces of fantasy managers, meaning that his stats will perk up. But I think once he's back, he will be back. He will be the guy that we saw dominate for the first 6 weeks. Not the first 6 weeks, because week 1 was terrible. But after that, 6 straight weeks of just really great play and dominant fantasy numbers. You have to take the chance on that in early round 3.
All right. Now, I would just say, Dave, there's still the Dalvin Cook thing lingering. So right now, it does feel a little early to me. You think that's got any legs?
I'm not factoring in. I like the depth that they have at running back. I'm surprised that they're even looking at Dalvin Cook when they've got Carter, Zonovan Knight. They drafted Abanikanda. They would have to. They know their personnel better than I do. They might not be real happy with those guys if they're kicking the tires on Dalvin Cook, or and this would scare me off of Breece Hall. If they sign Dalvin Cook, it means that Breece Hall might not be ready for the first half of the season, in which case this pick is terrible. But for now, I'm expecting him to be okay. And that this is where I would take him right now.
You know who's really falling right now compared to what I've seen in
Josh
recent.
Allen.
No, but compared to what I've seen in recent, there he is, Mark Andrews. I haven't seen Mark Andrews fall to the middle of the third in a long time in our drafts that we've done with our obviously with some of the industry people.
I can't believe Josh Allen is on the board. This is.
I mean,
crazy.
it's a quarterback. Mark Andrews surprised me even more falling this far.
I mean, Josh Allen usually goes before Mark Andrews, I think. But let's talk about round 3 because you do get this run of wide receivers that we expect of Smith, Smith, Higgins, and Olave. They're all there. But round 3 is Breece Hall, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Jalen Hurts at 29, Mark Andrews at 30, Chris Olave at 31, Amari Cooper at 32, and then Josh Allen at 33. This team has all the J's: Jonathan Taylor, Jalen Waddle, and Josh Allen.
The mad scientist coming through. That's who's drafting. He got great value on Josh Allen in late round 3. There were too many managers in this draft that wanted to wait on quarterback.
Jahmyr Gibbs goes after Josh Allen, 34th overall. And looking at other running backs who are on the board, remember, half PPR here.
There's one running back he just went, Najee. Absolutely should have gone ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay. Najee, Dameon Pierce, Aaron Jones, Alexander Madison, J.K. Dobbins, they're all on the board. I don't think they're going to last another round as we are at the end of round 3 here. All right, Jahmyr Gibbs versus Najee Harris in full PPR, Dave, who do you take?
It's Najee because I think Najee's got a full workload coming his way. He's got an outside shot of averaging 20 touches a game. We didn't see a lot from him catching the ball last year. It doesn't mean that he can't do it. We saw him do it in spurts in his rookie year. I would hope that they go back to him in that role now that he's healthy. Love the way that he finished last year, averaged over 15 PPR points per game. I think his final 5 games, 6 games, something like that. But he was healthy to end last year. That Steelers offensive line, it was a weakness before. It is a strength now in a major way. And the second-year quarterback, Kenny Pickett, should make the passing game just a little bit better. His production last year stunk. I think Najee Harris is one of those running backs that you can target in round 3 and potentially get first-round numbers from.
All right, Dan, I'm going to ask you about round 3 and just tell me if you think there's any really good or really bad pick. Breece Hall, Devontae Smith, T. Higgins, Travis Etienne, Jalen Hurts, Mark Andrews, Chris Olave, Amari Cooper, Josh Allen, Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris, Calvin Ridley.
I mean, it's not going to surprise anyone to hear this, but you asked me the question, so I'll answer it. I don't think Travis Etienne in the beginning of round 3 is a good pick. Time will tell, but I don't see the path. And I do like that he has is doing 2 things elite. He's elite at forcing missed tackles, but when you draft a Tank Bigsby and you have your running back coach go crazy about how much he loved watching the film, he had to reverse it, run it back, run plays over twice. It's like, all right, well, you like him because he's a physical runner who's going to get you those between the tackle runs. That's a role that's going to happen. It's going to be in the red zone for Bigsby, and I think it's going to be some early down stuff too. And that doesn't leave enough, at least for me, for ETN round 3. As far as pick I love, I did really like Mark Andrews in the middle of round 3 there. I have some concerns about Andrews with the fact that they have weapons around him now that he hasn't had in the past. But I also think one thing that's not being baked into that concern that people have about Andrews is that they're also going to throw the ball a lot more than they ever have with Todd Monken. So that kind of evens it out. Yes, some targets are going to go away from him, but there's going to be so many more targets total that Mark Andrews will be fine because of it, maybe around the same as what we've seen. And this was a guy who was tight end 1 2 years ago before having an injured 2022 season. So that was my favorite pick for sure.
And guys, we're not sure if Rashad Bateman's at 100% yet. We know that Odell Beckham is practicing. He should be fine, but we aren't sure if he can last the whole season. Zay Flowers is a super exciting rookie receiver. Dan and I have talked about him ad nauseum on this show. There's no guarantee that any of those 3 wideouts are going to dominate or command targets the way that Andrews has.
Yep.
So you're getting him at a discount compared to last year because he wasn't as good last year. I think he can get you 13 PPR points per game. That's really good for a tight end in round 3.
All right, we're going to take a break and come back, and we'll talk about round 4. We'll pause the draft after round 4, and we'll go over everybody's start and how they've structured their team. And we'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, welcome back. We're wrapping up round 4 here, and DJ Moore is about to get drafted with the 46th overall pick. There's a lot of picks that we have missed, so I will catch you up on them. Miles Sanders. This is round 4, starting at pick 37. Miles Sanders, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, J.K. Dobbins, Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, pack to pack there, and DJ Moore. So far, I thought by the time I read that, I thought there'd be more picks, and there haven't been. So let me get this going here as Kip is on the clock, and he takes Deebo Samuel. Now, 47th, I don't really take Deebo Samuel up. 47th overall and half PPR, that's pretty good. All right, TJ Hawkinson, the last pick of round 4, 48th overall, third tight end off the board. So again, round 4 is Miles Sanders, 2 quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, then DK Metcalf, J.K. Dobbins, Keenan Allen. It's an interesting one in half PPR. Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Aaron Jones, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel, and TJ Hawkinson. Let me ask you guys, how do you rank in half PPR? Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Jerry Jeudy. Give me your top 3. You don't have to rank all of them. Your top 3. Metcalf, Keenan Allen, Jeudy, Christian Watson, DJ Moore, Deebo Samuel. Dave, what's your top 3?
I'll go with Jeudy, Allen, and DJ Moore.
Okay. Dan, your top 3.
I'm going to go with Metcalf, Allen, and Deebo Samuel.
Okay. Both of you had Keenan Allen in there, and that was the only comment.
And I worry about Allen because, again, he's a guy who's never topped 8 receiving touchdowns. It just feels like such a good value to me, and I worry that I'm overinflating what he even was when he was fully healthy. Because now he's age 31. He's entering that age range that I don't really typically like to invest fantasy assets in. But we're talking 4th round, so I've kind of gotten into Keenan Allen this year, and I've had more than a few shares. I do worry that I'm not really baking enough into it that he's limited from an upside standpoint.
All right, but is he limited from a downside? The downside,
right? That's what I like about him, Dave. But then again, it's like I like his quote unquote floor, but then again, he's 31 with injuries. Sorry,
right? Please let me get in here, and I just want to move this along. I want to go through all these teams and how they've started, and get your thoughts on it, please. Okay. I just want to make sure we're able to finish this draft or get close to it. Team 1, Michael, has Jefferson, Mixon, Breece Hall, and TJ Hawkinson. So far, 1 wide receiver. He's on the clock as soon as I resume the draft, but it's Jefferson, Mixon, Breece Hall, and TJ Hawkinson. What do you think? Real quick.
He's got a shot at Hopkins. He's got a shot at Deontay Johnson, Chris Godwin if he wants him. But, I mean, those are the names. Terry McLaurin. Those are the top 4 receivers left on my board. And it gets a little worse after that. So this is where he needs to go and get one of those wideouts.
It's a nice hero receiver build when you have Justin Jefferson. I don't hate it. I think he's got a lot of upside with those 2 backs as well, specifically Breece Hall. I am not a believer in TJ Hawkinson getting 4th round draft capital or even 5th round draft capital. It's a late 4th round pick, but that's just me. I think the Jordan Addison addition is going to really hurt him, but we'll see what happens there.
Was the Hawkinson pick made because he wanted to have a quality tight end? That's the only reason I can think of why he's taken him there. I agree with you, Dan. I think he's a 5-6 turn pick.
All right. Team 2, Eckler, Ramondre, Devontae Smith, Deebo Samuel. Eckler, Ramondre, Devontae Smith, Deebo Samuel.
Solid.
Good. Yeah, it's a good team.
Solid team.
It's a solid team. Having Eckler at the anchor is great. He's going to be able to pick up Justin Fields if he wants to with his first pick in round 5. I think that would make the team a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it. That's where he should go.
Team 3 is interesting. No running backs. Kelsey, Mahomes, Higgins, DJ Moore. And the best running backs available, we still have Dameon Pierce, Alexander Madison.
It's going to work out great for him if Dameon Pierce falls. If not, Alexander Madison's there. Kenneth Walker's there. These are great round 5 picks.
All right, team 4, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones.
Solid build.
I like that team. I like that. OJ Weber at team 5 is Christian McCaffrey, Tony Pollard. So that's an RB start. Jalen Hurts did not take. I think the only team that didn't take a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds. So McCaffrey, Pollard, Jalen Hurts, Christian Watson.
This is my favorite team. McCaffrey at 5 should never happen, in my opinion. Pollard should never last that long into round 2. So I thought he dominated rounds 1 and 2, and then I thought he dominated rounds 3. I think Jalen Hurts belongs, if not at Mahomes' pick, right behind Mahomes.
I think this is going to be the most polarizing team that we see because he went running back, and I feel like the general public has been programmed into thinking, oh, you can't take running backs that heavy anymore. You've got to go and get wide receivers. And I think it's safer to take 1 running back and 1 wide receiver with your first 2 picks, for example. But I think this year's zag to the zig is to take 2 running backs. And he got 2 running backs at great values. Dan mentioned McCaffrey at 5, Pollard in mid to late round 2. They shouldn't go there. And so the key point that I would have here is if this is you and you're drafting, you're seeing a running back slip a little bit, don't worry about going 0 RB or dominating with wide receivers. Be a running back bully and go get these guys at good values in your draft.
I would have taken DeAndre Hopkins instead of Christian Watson in that particular build, because I think RB is always risky. I feel like it
is
never works out for me. It looks great on paper, but they're just such a volatile position. But I still love the start. McCaffrey and Pollard, you have to do it. And then going Jalen Hurts, I would have taken a more sure thing at wide receiver if you consider maybe like Deebo Samuel. But Watson, I don't know. Watson would not have been the pick for that build. I don't know if it makes a difference to you, like your risk versus upside. But for that build, I'm not going Watson as my number 1 receiver. I'd rather Watson be my number 2 receiver if I already have an established veteran.
Well, he's not getting a number 1 receiver when he's going to spend his first 3 picks on 2 running backs and Jalen Hurts.
I think Hopkins might not be top 12, but he's like a bona fide, like we know what to expect from Hopkins. I think,
I would disagree. We don't know what to expect from him. He's in that same group as Keenan Allen as far as age becoming a factor. Yeah. And now he's on Tennessee, and that's a team that just does not throw a ton to its wide receivers. I don't think we can look at him. He's been getting double-digit targets per game the majority of his career. I don't think we can look at him getting there anymore. Not with Derrick Henry healthy, not with the way the Titans offense operates, not with a second-year wide receiver and Treylon Burks in the fold. He's still going to be pretty good. I could see him getting over 1,000 yards, but the touchdowns I'm worried about and 100 catches I'm worried about as well.
Yeah, but any concern you have with him, you'd have to have with Christian Watson. There's no way you can say that
Watson has a different set of concerns.
Yeah, but there are concerns about both of them. All right.
Right. That's what happens when you get to round 4 in your draft and you're looking for a wide receiver.
All right. Point taken. DeAndre Hopkins is the first pick of round 5. So that's Jefferson, Mixon, Breece Hall, Hawkinson, and Hopkins.
That's great.
The next pick, Eckler, Ramondre, Devontae Smith, and Deebo Samuel. I'm not going to be able to get to the build for every team. Sorry about that.
Well, you know what? You can do that when we stop the draft again. You can go to the middle 4 teams if you want, or the next 5 or whatever.
All right. Alvin Kamara is about to be the pick here, which is much earlier than we're used to seeing. That's 51st overall. And Joseph, if you're listening to me, I still am not really clear why I have to make all of your picks. You're just saying who you want in the chat. I do think if you click on a player's name and click draft, you should be able to draft that player. Justin Herbert goes 4th. All right. So now we get to the McCaffrey, Pollard, Hurts, Christian Watson team that we just spent a lot of time on, and they take Terry McLaurin.
Another player I think is underrated in fantasy this year.
McLaurin?
Yeah.
Make the case.
My case is that, and I had a good conversation with Jamie about it. He's kind of brought me a little bit down.
And me. Remember, I was there too.
And you, Adam. I didn't mean to take you out of. You're in every conversation, Adam. You don't need to be. You don't need the attention. You're in every conversation. But I think I may be overrating a little bit more of how much I like him as an actual player, Dave. I think he's a top 10 actual receiver, and he gets open at an incredible rate. I think he consistently beat man coverage on the outside, which I don't think more than like 2 handfuls of receivers can at most. So I may be overrating all of that and just thinking, wow, I'm getting this guy in round 5 who's one of the better receivers in the NFL, because the issue is, of course, Sam Howell, the new offense, things like that. So yes, I may be overrating all that, but I just feel like Terry McLaurin is someone who I can plug in. We're talking about safe plays here. You were talking about the right before this, we were talking about Christian Watson being kind of like the not safe play, and Adam would have preferred a safe play in DeAndre Hopkins. I think McLaurin's a pretty safe bet to get to a certain point with receptions, yards, things like that.
We've never seen him
Right.
be a
That was James'
dominator over a long stretch. Certainly over the course of a season. In full PPR last year, 13.5 points per game, 12.2 the year before. Now Dotson's going to be in his second year. Questions at quarterback. Just makes me a little bit nervous to be in love with McLaurin. But he's absolutely, this is the range he's going to go in. I can't say that it's a bad pick. But this is why he's not going. This is why he shouldn't be a round 4 pick. Because there will be a contingent of fantasy managers that won't want Hopkins, won't want Metcalf, won't want Cooper, won't want Debo, won't want Christian Watson, and they'll see McLaurin and they know that he's exciting, and they'll take him in round 4. And I just don't think that that's a good idea.
Look, some of the players picked after him. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. Team 6, right? Bijan, St. Brown, Mark Andrews, Jerry Jeudy, and then Trevor Lawrence in round 5. So that's still only 1 running back, but they went with Trevor Lawrence ahead of Justin Fields. Team 7 had 3 receivers and a running back: Kupp, Henry, Olave, Keenan Allen, and went with Dameon Pierce. So we'll see how that team turns out. No tight end, no quarterback yet. Same thing with Team 8. Tyreek Hill, Josh Jacobs, Amari Cooper, J.K. Dobbins, and then Deontay Johnson in round 5. So that's Jacobs and Dobbins at running back, Tyreek Hill, Amari Cooper, Deontay Johnson. Team 9 also does not. Oh, no, I'm sorry. No tight end, but they have a quarterback: Jonathan Taylor, Jalen Waddle, Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Ken Walker. And now they take, I'll get to round 6 in a bit. They're already up to round 6. Team 10 was Stephon Diggs, Nick Chubb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Burrow, Drake London. Those were the first 5 picks for Team 6. For Team 10. Team 11 was CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, then Najee Harris, then Lamar Jackson, and then Kyle Pitts. So that's 1 running back, 2 receivers, tight end, and quarterback through 5 rounds. Lamb, AJ Brown, Najee Harris, Lamar Jackson, Kyle Pitts. Kind of like that team. Stephen Barkley in pick 12 took Saquon Barkley, then Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Miles Sanders, Justin Fields, and James Conner. James Conner was the first pick of round 6. That's where we're at right now. Conner, DeAndre Swift, Marquise Brown, George Kittle, Tua Tagovailoa. That's early-ish for Tua, so it's before Deshaun Watson. But
yeah, I'm okay with that part, but it's still too early.
Yeah, probably could have waited. Darren Waller, Cam Akers, Chris Godwin, Rashad White. I don't really see any crazy picks one way or another. Maybe Tua.
Tua would be the one. Definitely felt a little too early, but if you've got that sense that he's going to just absolutely pop off in the games that he plays in, then you reach a little. But I still think he could have waited 1 more round at least to get Tua on his squad.
All right, I'm going to make a pick again for
Joseph.
I'm enjoying this. I love that Adam, on top of having to host the show and commission the league, now has to draft for one of our listeners.
I just like the way Adam described. He's like, I'm not quite sure why I have to make these picks for this guy. He's just like telling me the picks in the chat.
The other thing is every single person in the chat is telling him the same thing. They're like, click on the name and hit draft. Click on the player, draft him. I think, I don't know how you guys feel. I think I'd like to get back to looking at the individual teams and their builds.
Yeah.
Instead of going round by round. So we did 5 of those teams. And the team that went McCaffrey, Pollard, Hurts, Christian Watson is just loading up on wide receivers now. Watson, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin.
I like
through
it.
6 rounds. So let's take a look at the other teams here. This would be the 6th pick in the draft. Bijan, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Mark Andrews. That was a pick Dan loved. Jerry Jeudy, Trevor Lawrence, and Cam Akers as RB2. So that would be Lawrence and Andrews, Bijan and Akers, Jeudy and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I think you'll see this build pretty frequently where they go with the anchor running back, hero RB, as it were. You get one stud early on, and then you build around him with some good wide receivers, and in this case, Mark Andrews at tight end. And then you just kind of go best player available. And I think it opens up this manager to go after running backs pretty hog wild starting in round 7 or 8. So I would expect maybe one more wide receiver mixed in from this team, and then just a bunch of running backs to go along with Bijan. Cam Akers is the number 2. That was his round 6 pick. I think that's pretty good.
All
Let me
right,
ask you
the
guys a
next
question.
team. Yeah, I'll give you the next team, Dan. You ready? So that's Cooper Kupp, 7th overall pick. Cooper Kupp, Derrick Henry, Chris Olave, Keenan Allen, Damian Pierce, and Darren Waller. No quarterback yet, unless they just took one. I don't think they did.
Nope.
All right. So again, it's the running backs are Henry and Pierce, Kupp, Olave, Keenan Allen are the 2 receivers in the flex, and Darren Waller at tight end. You like it?
Yeah, I really like this team. I think, these are the types of teams to me that tend to have the best chance to break out, the ones that do wait on quarterback. Today's game, it's less so. That's not the case as much as it used to be. But when you do it like this, look at what you're going to have. You're going to have this core of wide receivers, running backs, and you even get Darren Waller here, who I really like as a tight end potential difference maker as the number 1 option in New York. And you're going to be in a good spot all season long at those key positions. You just have to obviously hit on a quarterback. I would like, when I do these builds, I like to go back-to-back quarterbacks in a round. So I'd go like 2 upside guys around QB 11 through 14 range here, which there's still plenty of guys to go for.
Well, the good thing for this manager who took Waller, actually took Jordan Addison around 7. Everyone picking after him has a quarterback. So
Right.
I wouldn't wait. In round 8, if I'm this guy, I'm taking Deshaun Watson without hesitation.
Well, why not Anthony Richardson? Because
I'm not a Richardson guy, but sure.
Fine. Okay. But you're destined to take 2 quarterbacks anyway. You might as well take the one that's got the most upside in the universe, which is
I don't see how – I don't get this. I don't see how Deshaun Watson, who was perennially a top 5 or 6 quarterback, like a 600-plus yard rushing guy with great, threw for almost 5,000 yards one year. I can't sit here and say that Anthony Richardson has more upside than Deshaun Watson. I think that that's just how
He's the most athletic quarterback in the history of the combine. How could he not?
Because he's going to have bad passing stats.
No, I think he's going to be worse than Watson. I think he's going to be worse than Watson. We're just talking about upside alone, though.
This isn't a dynasty draft. This is a 2023 upside.
But what about when Lamar Jackson hit the league running?
He did not do it in his rookie year.
Oh, you are right. He did not do it in his rookie year.
Yeah. So
what about Kyler? Kyler had running.
Kyler Murray was like 12-ish per game as a rookie.
Okay.
Something like that. Justin Fields was terrible as a rookie.
I know Fields, yeah.
All right, next team.
Point taken.
Next team is Paul. Tyreek Hill. I started with Tyreek Hill, Josh Jacobs, Amari Cooper, J.K. Dobbins, Deontay Johnson. So his first 5 picks were his running backs, receiver, and flex. Hill, Cooper, Deontay, Jacobs, and Dobbins. And then he went with Tua at quarterback and Javonte Williams now in round 7. Dave, you like this team?
I don't like the Tua pick. I think it's a little too early. He could have taken, but okay, fine. I think Tua was a little too early, but I think Javonte Williams was a really good value. So if you were to flip those 2 picks, it would probably work out just fine. It's a good team. I don't like the Cooper reach either. I felt like he took him a little bit too early.
All right, next pick or next drafter is Aaron. He had Taylor. This was the 9th overall pick. Taylor, Jalen Waddle, Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Ken Walker, George Kittle. And then he ended up with Jahan Dotson at flex, I guess, and James Cook he took in round 8. We're already in round 8. I'll catch everybody up on round 7 and 8. But Taylor and Walker at running back, Waddle and Metcalf at receiver, Josh Allen at quarterback, George Kittle at tight end, and Jahan Dotson. Dan, your thoughts on this team?
It's a good build. I wonder if we're overhyping Jahan Dotson a little bit. I saw recently Jamie moved them all the way up in his rankings to the point where he's just behind Terry McLaurin in that tier as well. We went over wide receiver tiers earlier this week. If we have the concerns about the quarterback situation, the new system, even the offensive line there in Washington, which is not good, and that division as a whole, the NFC East is facing a gauntlet of a schedule. You could see this in Dave's projected strength of schedule rankings. I mean, we're going from a division that faced the AFC South for 4 games last year to the AFC East. That's horrible. And the NFC North to the NFC West. That's horrible. I just wonder if we're overrating Jahan Dotson based on his talent, because he is a great talent and I like him as a talent, but as an actual fantasy asset, as a number 2 option on a bad passing game with a tough schedule and a bad offensive line, I just Dotson's someone I just don't see myself drafting this year.
All right, Dave. Team 10, Rami, took Diggs and Chubb in the first 2 rounds. Then Jahmyr Gibbs. You would have preferred Najee Harris. Joe Burrow. And then he went 3 receivers in a row. Drake London, Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis, Khalil Herbert. Obviously, I'm able to read more picks for each team as we go because, we're making progress in the draft here. But
yeah,
Stephon Diggs, Drake London, Marquise Brown, Gabe Davis at receiver, Nick Chubb, Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, Joe Burrow at quarterback, Khalil Herbert as a bench player as well. No tight end yet. And we're definitely in a different tier of tight end. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 off the board. So I don't know. You like this team?
It's all right. I remember reading in the chat that Rami, who drafted this team, didn't like his round 3 and 4 picks. It's never a good thing when you say in the chat, "Oh, I hate my picks," after you make your pick. Why did you make those picks? Starting with Chubb and Diggs was fantastic. Chubb is going to get pushed up. Where did he go? Like 15th in our mock today?
Yes.
Yep.
He's getting pushed up. There's starting to get some groundswell for him to have a big year. He's always been really good for fantasy, even in full PPR. Last year, 16.6 PPR points per game overall. It was really down when Watson was on the field and up more with Brissett. The year before, 14.5 PPR points per game. Any uptick in targets for Chubb would be huge, but the fact that there's no Kareem Hunt, no one's really buying Jerome Ford as someone who's going to come in and take work away from Chubb, you can kind of see a path for him to get 20 touches per game and maybe even 1 or 2 catches per game. That would make a big difference in full PPR. Being that it's half PPR, mostly fine with him going at 15. I don't like Gibbs in round 3 and half PPR. He's better in full PPR. I don't mind Burrow in round 4, but there probably was a better wide receiver that you could have taken there, and then you could have gone with a quarterback in round 5 or 6 when you took Drake London. I love the start. The first 2 picks are great. He won't be unhappy with Burrow by the time the season's over, but I do wish his depth at running back and wide receiver were just a little bit stronger.
All right. CeeDee Lamb was the first pick for Team 11. A.J. Brown. So that's wide receiver. Let's see how they did with that. CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Najee Harris. And then instead of taking maybe a Dobbins or an Aaron Jones or a Madison in round 4, they went with Lamar Jackson. And then Kyle Pitts. So really waited on RB2, but ended up with DeAndre Swift in round 6. Then Mike Evans, and then Dalvin Cook in round 8. I think that's a great pick if you're going receiver, and then waiting until round 6 to take your second running back. Dalvin Cook in round 8 is a good one. So Lamar, starting lineup of Lamar Jackson, Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Kyle Pitts, and then at flex, either Mike Evans or Dalvin Cook. I'm just gonna give the analysis here. I think this is a really good team, really good start. I think maybe Waddle over A.J. Brown, but I don't really care. Good job. Team 12, Dan, you can comment on this one because it has Saquon Barkley, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Miles Sanders, Justin Fields, James Conner, David Njoku, and Michael Thomas. Saquon Barkley and Sanders at running back with Conner as a flex, Devontae Adams and Calvin Ridley at receiver, Justin Fields and David Njoku, and then on the bench, Michael Thomas.
Yeah, and it's a balanced build. It's just not necessarily the players that I'm targeting in this fantasy season. Devontae Adams is the player I'm definitely avoiding this fantasy season. And I I'm never going to be the guy who's going to take a tight end like David Njoku in round 7. It's just not a spot for me. I feel like he's pushed up entirely because of the position he plays. And that's just not, I'd rather take my gamble on finding my Amon-Ra St. Brown of this year or whoever it may be. Cooper Kupp was a 7th round pick 2 years ago or a 6th round pick. I mean, you maybe not get those guys, but I'd rather take that gamble there. So I just feel like this team did build balance, which is nice, but just doesn't
how
have.
he went about it.
Yeah. And Michael Thomas is another guy around 8. I'm like, yeah, Michael Thomas at one point, what was it, 2019 was the wide receiver 1. That was 2019. And since then, he's had so many lower body injuries, building up. I don't know that when he gets back on the practice field, he's the same player he was. I know he had a great stretch last year. He was dominant in the red zone.
First 3 games of the year. He was very
and he
good.
looked awesome. I'm not worried about what he can do if he's on the field healthy. I'm worried about that body staying healthy at this point when it's been that many of the same injuries over and over to an area of your body that like may not recover.
And I would just argue that it's a round 8 pick, Dan. I'm not going to get into the minutia of whether or not Thomas is a risk. There's no question about it because of his injuries. If he's right, then you're going to be thrilled that you've got him in round 8. If he's wrong, it's kind of like you shrug your shoulders and say, all right, well, it's a round 8 pick. It's not the end of the world. So I'm not going to ding him for that. And it's like for every great value that he got, Saquon, I think, is going to end up being a great value. Justin Fields was a great value. He also had some picks. You mentioned the Njoku pick for one that just weren't, it wasn't a great pick. It was kind of reaching a little bit. Only reach for the guys that you're sure you're not going to get coming back. That's like the only time that you should go and get your guys sooner than what ADP suggests or what the general public suggests, is because you think he's going to be way better. It's a personal opinion. And maybe that's what Steven's thinking when he took David Njoku. Maybe he thinks we're nuts for being low on Njoku.
Yeah. It's fair.
All right, guys.
Heath would agree with him. Heath has Njoku 6th among tight ends.
Wow.
We got to take a break here. When we come back, we'll go. I think we were up to round 7. I'll just recap the picks and we will discuss. We'll be right back. Thank you for hanging out with us on this Friday, everybody. Hope you have an awesome weekend in advance. And let's take a look at the picks. We'll go round by round. We have missed an awful lot. I think we went through, I think we only did round 5. So round 6 was James Conner, 61st overall. Just real quick, Dave, you okay with that? James Conner, DeAndre Swift to start round 6, 61 and 62 overall.
Much more fine with Conner than Swift. They both have injury concerns, of course, but Conner should be another 8, let's say 20, a 20-touch candidate in Arizona. He'll catch the ball. Whereas Swift might not even see 10 touches very often in Philadelphia. But as I've said with Swift, and you could put Michael Thomas in this group, just whatever point in the draft that you look at a pick and you go, okay, I can afford to splurge a little bit, that's where you take DeAndre Swift. For me, that's round 7.
Okay, let's go to the next few picks then. Marquise Brown. I like Marquise Brown. Do you like him 63rd overall, Dan?
I'm not a Marquise Brown guy. I do like, but you pointed out that he was good last year before. Yeah, and even at times when the situation wasn't perfect, but I don't trust it. New system. I'm not so sure he's going to be the focal point of that passing game. I'm not sure I want any part of that passing game anyway. Just think it's a little too early for somebody in a really bad situation.
So
with an injury history, by the way.
Yeah, what was I going to say? I would have taken, I like him, but I would have taken Chris Godwin. I would have taken Christian Kirk over him. Some of the guys that went after Marquise Brown. All right, so Marquise Brown, George Kittle, Tua, which we thought was a little early, Darren Waller. And at that point, well, we still have Goddard, who goes about 8 picks later, Cam Akers, Chris Godwin, Rashad White, David Montgomery. David Montgomery goes late round 6. Jahmyr Gibbs goes late round 3. What was the better pick, guys?
Montgomery for me.
It's going to be unpopular, but it's Montgomery.
Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk to finish the 6th round. I know I've kind of debated with Schneier, Kirk versus Ayuk. We had a really good debate about that last Friday, Dave. I took the Kirk side. He took the Ayuk side. Where do you fall on that?
They're back-to-back in my rankings. I have Kirk 1 spot ahead of Ayuk. I'm worried about the target crunch in San Francisco, and I think that offense will throw less than Jacksonville's. I've kind of come around on what I learned about Doug Peterson. I don't think there's going to be one guy that gets a massive target share among the wide receivers. So I've started to move Calvin Ridley down my rankings, and I've moved Christian Kirk up a little bit in my rankings. And I think that they should be drafted a little bit closer together. When you're getting Christian Kirk at the end of round 6, I like it better in full PPR than half PPR, but I think that's the right spot.
Okay. AJ Dillon was the first pick of round 7, followed by Dallas Goedert. So he is the last of those top 8 tight ends, right? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. Is it 7? I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 7. He's the last of that group of tight ends that we talk a lot about. Brian Robinson, Mike Williams, Michael Pittman, Tyler Lockett, Jordan Addison. So there's Addison right after Lockett. Very different situations there. Javonte, look at all the wide receivers in this round. Wow. Javonte Williams, we're in the middle of round 7 here. Jahan Dotson, Gabe Davis, Mike Evans, and then David Njoku. Dan, if there's one player at wide receiver that you gravitate toward in this group and one that you avoid, who would they be? So it's Mike Williams, Michael Pittman, Tyler Lockett, Jordan Addison, Jahan Dotson, Gabe Davis, and Mike Evans.
For me, it's been gravitating away from Jahan Dotson. I made the case earlier, and it's gravitating toward who is the not Mike Williams, who I do like at value this year. Who is the Gabe Davis. I'm in on Gabe Davis this year. I think last year I was in on him. It cost me a 4th-round pick. It was a mistake. I overrated the situation versus the talent. This year, that same situation is there, in my opinion. He's fully healthy this year. Josh Allen's going to be fully healthy. Those were things that weren't the case last year. And yet you're getting a 3-round discount from last year, despite the situation being pretty similar. So I really like Gabe Davis this year. I'm definitely buying back in.
Put me down for Tyler Lockett. He continues to outperform DK Metcalf. Each of the last 2 years, he's been better on a per-game basis. You're getting a discount on him compared to Metcalf. I know that Smith and Jigba's there, and he'll definitely take targets away from Lockett, but he's going to take targets away from Metcalf too. He's perpetually undervalued in drafts. He's my favorite one of this group, just ahead of Mike Evans.
Okay, round 8 would be Michael Thomas. We talked about that. And then 4 running backs in a row. And 2 of them are related. Dalvin Cook, Khalil Herbert, James Cook, and Antonio Gibson. And obviously, Antonio Gibson and James Cook are related. Okay. Dalvin Cook, Khalil Herbert, James Cook, Antonio Gibson. Dave, you think those guys are good round 8 picks? So this is a little earlier than ADP, at least for Khalil Herbert, for example. But do you think Dalvin, Khalil, Cook, Gibson, and then Pacheco, a little later than I would expect for Pacheco? He went 2 picks later. Your thoughts on those 5 running backs in round 8?
I've got Cook, Herbert, Pacheco ranked relatively close together. In fact, it's not relatively close. Among running backs, they're back to back to back. And I've got them as round 6/7 picks. So getting them in round 8, I think that's really good value for all 3 of them. We don't know where Dalvin Cook's going to play. The longer it takes him to find a team, I'm worried that it'll be more of a split for him and not the workhorse role that we're used to for Dalvin Cook. I still think Khalil Herbert has 1,000-yard potential. I think he's the most explosive running back that Chicago has. I think he'll continue to be an efficient running back working off of Justin Fields. And I like his chances to stick around and have, I guess, a breakout year. Was last year a breakout year? He had some breakout games.
Yeah, he had a good year. Yeah,
I think he was more of a sleeper last year than a breakout. This year, I think he's going to be more of a breakout.
Okay, great. We've got, let's see, after that running back group, Deshaun Watson went to the team that I thought it made sense for him to take Deshaun Watson. Didn't get his quarterback until round 8. Pacheco was next. George Pickens, Samaje Perine. So that is Perine, late round 8, and Javonte was mid round 7. So let's say, I don't know, 15 picks maybe after, no, more like 12 picks, like a round after Javonte Williams. Dave or Dan, your thoughts on Broncos?
Yeah, I think the interesting situation here is, and Dave did good research on this back in February, because I've been pulling it a bunch of times. That's why I know the articles from February. You should be excited about the potential of running backs on the Broncos. I don't know if you should get excited more about Javonte Williams or Samaje Perine. I've been on Perine all offseason because he's healthier. I really liked what I saw on film during his time with Cincinnati, especially last year. And I just don't really trust running backs coming back from the injury Williams did in year 1. So I've been more on Perine, better fantasy value too, in the sense that you get him later. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at Sean Payton's history, targets are coming to these running backs. The system will be running through the running backs in the passing game. That's how it is with Sean Payton. Doesn't matter if Russell Wilson's done in his past. You don't need to look up Russell Wilson's past stats throwing to running backs. That's not how it works in the NFL. These quarterbacks are going to do what the coaches say. Just look at what Dable did with Daniel Jones last year and Mike McDaniel with Tua. Same thing's going to happen with Sean Payton. There's going to be a lot of running back targets in this offense, and that means these running backs are going to have a real opportunity to outproduce what their expectations are in fantasy. So I kind of like both, but I lean P. Ryan in that situation.
All right, a round later. After Samaje Perine, we had Rashad Penny, Anthony Richardson, and Kadarius Toney. So Toney goes with the last pick of round 8.
Yep.
Sky Moore was... Where was Sky Moore? Trying to find him here.
Sky Moore was in the middle of round 9.
Okay.
102nd overall.
Okay, so that's 6 picks after Kadarius Toney.
Yeah, they're getting closer together. I bet you'll see Sky Moore flirt with going ahead of Toney in ADP by mid-August, because I think there's going to be some hype around him and he'll steam up. Second-year receiver, could take over the slot role, could generate as many as 100 targets in that offense. And really it'll come down to how healthy Toney is all season. If Toney's healthy, you can count on him for 5 or 6 targets per game. But for those games where Toney's out, I think you'll see a pretty significant uptick for Sky Moore. I'm also not opposed with getting both of them. So, like the team that drafted Toney did it with the last pick in round 8. I wouldn't have been opposed if he took Moore with the first pick in round 9. Do the old Adam Azer style friendship strategy.
It's interesting, but the thing about the friendship strategy was that you had to feel that they were both good values where they were, and that if one of them got hurt, basically, you were guaranteed to have a starter. I don't really put those guys in the friendship strategy. I would almost be like Kelsey and Toney or Kelsey and Moore or something like that. Where, gosh, if Kelsey gets hurt, then all of a sudden your Kadarius Toney pick in round 8 looks amazing. But even if Kelsey doesn't get hurt, your Toney pick in round 8 still looks fine. All right, we're on to round 9 here. Zach Charbonnet, Dak Prescott, Jamal Williams. All right, so we got Charbonnet at the first. I got to do this again. Charbonnet, first pick of round 9. Ken Walker, late round or early round 5. So that would have been about 50th overall. So round 5 for Walker, round 9 for Charbonnet. What do you guys prefer?
Round 9 for Charbonnet, without a doubt.
I was going to say Walker in round 5.
Bam! Take that, Dan.
Well, I did write up a article for Sportsline yesterday. 10 training camp battles that I'm following. I think there's an outside chance Charbonnet outscores Walker this year.
Without any injuries?
Without any injuries.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you, my case is he takes over the red zone role almost immediately. He takes over the passing down role almost immediately. Walker's still a big play threat. Obviously, that's not Charbonnet's game. But fantasy points are scored in the passing game and in the red zone. So I think there's an outside chance of it.
It really does come down to that red zone role.
Yeah.
And I can't say with certainty that Charbonnet is going to get it. Dan, we studied him. He was good in that role at UCLA. He's got to be able to translate it, though, into the NFL. So if he does, and hopefully we catch wind of it before the season starts, then slam dunk Charbonnet would be the better pick there. But Walker's talented, man. We can't completely sleep on him. And apparently he's worked on his receiving game this offseason too. So this might be an area of strength for Seattle. They might try and get both running backs going in the passing game, and that would help Walker. I'm kind of looking for Walker in round 5 in my drafts because he's got so much upside. If things break right for him, you're talking about a guy that's going to finish as a top 5 running back this year.
I really think it's fine. I mean, we're at like an hour now, and I'm going to try to get through most of the rest of the draft here, which is over, by the way. I want to thank everybody for completing it. I really think there's almost this narrative going around that Ken Walker, it just sells Ken Walker short. And it's the idea that he's such a boomer bust running back, because he was last year. But you know what? So was Jonathan Taylor. 2 years in a row, Jonathan Taylor's been like that. Some running backs are like that. I would say Saquon Barkley is like that. He has a lot of really bad runs. He might have 14 carries for 25 yards at one point, and then he might break a 60-yard touchdown run. And I think people are being a little bit too hard on Ken Walker after 1 year where he was really, really good, but was a little bit boomer bust on a carry by carry basis. And I'll save this rant for another show. Let's move on here. Charbonnet was the first pick of round 9. Dak Prescott. So actually, do you think Deshaun Watson and Anthony Richardson should go ahead of Dak Prescott? 5-second answer, Dave.
I think it should be Richardson, Prescott, Watson.
Okay. Jamal Williams going to the same guy who took Kamara. And I'm going to pause there and I'm going to look at Joseph's team because he went Kelsey Mahomes. He probably interested. How did that team turn out? Kelsey Mahomes, T. Higgins, DJ Moore. So not only are you going with a wide receiver tight end stack, you're going no running backs till round 5. Then he took 5 in a row. Kamara, Montgomery, Brian Robinson, Rashad Penny, Jamal Williams, and Israel Abanikanda and Raheem Mostert and Deontay Foreman later. And he also took Adam Thielen. So this to me is actually, I think, a big mistake when you go like 0 RB, which is kind of what he did, Kelsey Mahomes, Higgins, DJ Moore. I don't think you should basically completely forget about wide receiver for the rest of the draft. You better hope that Higgins and Moore are both really good. Otherwise, you've got Adam Thielen as your only bench receiver. So I think he went a little bit too heavy with the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 picks. 8 of them were running backs and 1 was Adam Thielen. So I think it's a little bit too much for me. But anyway, that's how that team turned out. Dan, what do you think? Kamara, he does have Kamara and Jamal Williams, so that could be a starter. And he has David Montgomery. He might be able to pull this off.
I think in a 2 receiver league, which we're at here, he actually has a good chance to be able to pull this off.
Right. Okay. Next pick after Jamal Williams was Pat Freiermuth, then Evan Ingram, Sky Moore, Zay Flowers. He was the first Ravens receiver taken, right?
Yes.
Yep. Bateman went around later. Jackson Smith and Jigba. That is 2 rounds after Tyler Lockett. Is that good value?
I can't say it's good value. I'm just not sold on Smith and Jigba being a force for the Seahawks offense right away.
Okay.
Things could break right for him if Lockett slows down, if Metcalf misses time.
But the picks around him were Sky Moore, Zay Flowers, Cooks, Quentin Johnston, Treylon Burks. So I feel like he belongs there, right?
Right. I think this is right about where he'll go. I just don't know, especially in half PPR. I don't know if I can sign off on him as a round. He's close to 100th overall.
Yeah.
It just seems like maybe 10, 15 spots a little too early for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Brandon Cooks, Dalton Kincaid, Quentin Johnston, Treylon Burks. So 3 tight ends went in round 9, Freiermuth, Evan Ingram, and then Dalton Kincaid. No tight ends were taken until another round and a half when Dalton Schultz was selected. Round 10 is Juju, Elijah Moore, Romeo Dobbs, Devon Achane, some rookie running backs here. We got 2 rookie running backs, Achane and Tank Bigsby, Nico Collins as well, Damian Harris, Jamison Williams, Rashad Bateman, Adam Thielen, Jacoby Myers, Kirk Cousins. That's an interesting. All right, so what do you think about this? Michael Neitz, the guy who picked first, had a lot of chances, 9 of them, to take a quarterback. He may have been pretty disappointed when Dak Prescott went off the board. But that was a while.
Oh, no, I think he had a plan.
He went with Cousins. So he has Jefferson. He had the first overall pick. Jefferson, Mixon, Breece Hall, TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Brandon Ayuk, AJ Dillon, Kadarius Toney, Zach Charbonnet, Kirk Cousins.
Mega
Adam, this guy is a Kevin O'Connell fan.
Yes, Cousins to Hawkinson to Jefferson. I like it.
Yeah, he's buying into what was one of the most prolific passing offenses last year. They were top 3 in pass rate. They should be top 3 in pass rate again this year. I don't mind. He's not leaning into the Vikings passing game. He's cannonballing into it with Jefferson at 1. And remember, we talked about Hawkinson, and it felt like he was reaching for Hawkinson. His plan played out to perfection, loading up on Vikings.
The thing is, I thought you did not, Dave. You didn't think he reached for Breece Hall.
I did not.
makes me a little nervous, just, for obvious reasons. And then Hawkinson, we all didn't really love that pick. So if you want to play that game, Jefferson, Hawkinson, Cousins, it does seem like it seems like you have to reach, because there's, most people, instead of taking Breece Hall, are taking Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen there. And he didn't. He intentionally skipped over them so he could take Cousins later. But all right. Cousins, let's see what we're in round 11. I'll read one more round here. Elijah Mitchell, Rashawn Johnson, said that wrong. Israel Abanikanda, Jonathan Mingo, Jeff Wilson, Tyler Algier, Dalton. That is the Bijan Robinson team, so that's a good pick.
Nice.
Dalton Schultz, second.
That's very nice.
That's a second tight end, though. What do you think? Darren Waller and Dalton Schultz?
It's fine. I don't have a problem with getting a second tight end, especially if it's a guy that's got some upside. And I know that no one really thinks about Schultz as a sexy pick, but when you get to the Texans offense, tell me who's going to lead that team in targets, catches, yards, and touchdowns. You could say it could be Dalton Schultz.
It could be. I would be probably a bad year for the Texans offense, but it could be.
Well, I don't think anybody's expecting CJ Stroud to set fire to the National Football League.
No. Isaiah Hodgins. Dan, I don't think I've asked you, who's your favorite Giants receiver for fantasy?
It's Isaiah Hodgins by far for me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Henry Miller was selected after that. Greg Dulcich, Cortland Sutton, and Leonard Fournette.
So on Kendre Miller, if your league has IR spots, you might be able to draft him, stash him, and then immediately go to the waiver wire and pick up somebody else. And I would sign off on that. I just wouldn't do it in round 11. I think you can probably get away with that with literally your last pick.
I should also mention that the Dak Prescott pick in round 9 was the same team that took Anthony Richardson. So that is a pretty good combination of upside and safe starter.
And exactly what you have to do when you take Richardson.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
You have to do that, but at the same time, maybe would you rather wait for the next group? Because, picks 2 quarterbacks in 8 and 9 is a little bit early, Dave. So you could have waited another round maybe for Cousins, or you could have taken Rodgers or Geno or Daniel Jones or Wilson or something like that.
That's fair. And obviously, if it's a smaller league, like say it's an 8-team league and you take Anthony Richardson, you know that the waiver wire will have a ton of quarterbacks. So you don't have to necessarily get that second quarterback.
Okay. Well, Dan and Dave, thank you very much. Got fun weekend plans?
I'm working.
I have to go to my cousin's graduation party, so that doesn't sound as good as it is.
I'm getting excited, man. Training camps will be open.
What if your family listens to this show? Like, that could easily get back to your cousin.
Wait, what did he just say?
No, that needs to be edited out.
Repeat it.
Thomas, edit that out, please.
No, it's in posterity.
Okay, I love her, and I'm happy for her, and I'm excited to celebrate her. I don't want to do the drive on a weekend down.
Drive.
It's a drive.
It's right. Who wants to take a long drive on the weekend? All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here for this show. And to all of our drafters, much appreciated. And I want to end with something that I learned yesterday that really warms my heart. It will warm your heart as well. Did you know that the YouTube chatters got together and they started their own startup dynasty league?
Oh, nice.
I had a peek at it yesterday. It was really cool.
Good.
So that's awesome. Love it. Love to see it. Join our Facebook group while you're at it. We'll talk to you on Monday on Fantasy Football Today.